Well, hello everyone. Can you hear me? Is it okay? Well, I prefer not to have a desk in front of me because I feel it like a border or something. So maybe this is my intent to be closer and to get to know you a little bit through this talk. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's really a pleasure to work with these great bunch of people who are well organized, very motivated, enthusiastic, with great ideas. So it's really good to see you again, and I hope to have something to share with you, which would be new at least a little bit, because I know that this is a very diverse group of people from different countries, but that's not the only diversity there is. It's also different levels of expertise, different experiences, etc., etc. So my intent is here to try to focus attention on some of the key words, some of the key topics that have to do with equality and project-based language learning primarily, but also these ideas can be applied for any learning basically. So some of the key words that I would like to start with, so you can have them somewhere in your head along the talk, is inquiry-based approach, which is the underlying idea of eTwinning and different modalities of this kind of collaboration. Then bound networks, like the essential aspect of working in eTwinning kind of projects. Then the idea of boundaries and frustrations, that is the idea of where learning happens and how does it happen, and then to focus a little bit more on collaboration. So we're going to talk about these different aspects along the way. And I would like to start with a short video that is going, which is quite present now in Serbian TVs. It's a commercial, and I'm sure that some of you have already seen it. Why this commercial? Well, it will be clear for you as soon as I show you, because I think it really marks and represents well our target group, people whom we work with, like our students. So. As a springboard for some kind of discussion or reflection. The idea behind this, I am wondering, could you identify with some of these photos, some of these images, situations? For example, the mother who can't, the message is really strong and it targets our emotions. And the words in Serbian are, you can't make it, you can't make it. And then something happens and everything works out just fine. What is it that we can't make it, and what is it that we need to make it? Well, technology basically. If we don't have technology, then we don't have whatever human emotion or belonging, or our family relationships are in a way compromised. The mother can't help or see her child, and then I really identified with this small girl who can't download Peppa Pig. I don't know if you know the cartoon, but I saw different, well, it happens to me from time to time that I try to download something and it blocks, and then I'm really frustrated. So everything makes sense, but what's the idea of these situations? Do we really need technology for all of this? Well, some of us, yes, for functioning in the real world, in the current world, in the modern contemporary world, yes, we rely so much on the technology, so it really marks our reality. And I don't want to say that it's the only way that we can work, but essentially we tend to rely on the technology a lot throughout the daily life. So the idea is we can go out from this, and I'm really trying to take out the technology of my life a little bit, to make pauses, not to watch different screens during the whole day. But the idea is that most of the people that we work with will be technology dependent, and those are millennials and Generation Z. Most of us work with those people. We used to talk about millennials as something new, as a new group, but basically most of us, I see from your faces, many of us are millennials, at least according to this definition, born after 1981. So now we're talking about Generation Z, which is born after 1997. And all of my students are basically Generation Z already. They are graduating already. The people who are graduating, they are Generation Z. So is there any difference between the two groups? Some research suggests that there is. Millennials and Generation Z compared, some say that millennials are basically oriented toward fantasy. They are very optimistic. They see the world in bright colors. They can see the progress. They see progress as something good that is happening. And on the other side, we have Generation Z, which is characterized as dystopian. This is a word I'm hearing a lot lately. Dystopian, like not pessimistic, which also is a little bit part of that idea, but they don't have an optimistic, a positive outlook for our future. They see it with gray colors. A lot of people now, young people, are very realistic and even pessimistic in their realism. I don't know if that's based on experience, on reality, but some research suggests that it's like that. Then what we use in text messaging, generation of millennials basically used SMSs, chats, Facebook, but now our kids mainly use Insta. It's Insta and the photos, that's the way we communicate. We send emoticons, and that's enough to send a message. And then an interesting thing for me very much, especially because I work with the students, is that millennials primarily want to be discovered. They expect that someone would discover them, see their potential, and promote their potential. On the other way, Generation Z has this idea that their effort will guide them through the life, and it's basically dependent on their effort whether they're going to have success. So they're really dedicated, they're strong workers, they are very dedicated, that's the word I'm looking for. And in line, related to that, it's the quality of up-aging. Does it work? No? Yeah, up-aging, which means that they are becoming mature more promptly, at least seemingly. It doesn't mean that they are becoming mature very promptly, but they seem and they act as if they were mature. They find job earlier on, they are very dedicated, they're responsible, but then on the emotional side, we can wonder if that's really the case. And then there is also few other aspects of Generation Z. They're maybe the most important quality of Generation Z, they're digital. On average, they use 5 screens. Think about you. How many screens do you have on a daily basis? TV, many people don't use TV anymore, but then computer, laptop, phone, another laptop, tablet. Yeah, it's like we're only looking at the screens all the time. And then we're not the youngest generation. We have to keep that in mind. And then it makes us technology dependent, of course, like in the commercial that we could see. It's very interesting that this generation is also spontaneous and intuitive. They like to collect memories, value privacy, which is like paradox for me a little bit. If they are so exposed to the public and on nets and networks, at the same time they value privacy. And maybe the most important aspect for I don't know if it's the most important, but for me very important is the final, I'm fighting with this, low frustration tolerance. It's this really important characteristic of this generation that they expect to have really important accomplishments very early on in their lives. And if they don't make a change, if they don't make a difference early on, in their 20s, maybe, then they get frustrated and they get demotivated and they withdraw from the activity. And we all know that the most important thing for success in any aspect of human life is dedication. So if we don't persist in an endeavor, then there won't be satisfaction. So the frustration has to be part of the learning process. This is present in work situation, at the labor market, but it's also present in emotional relationships. So the first time when there is a bump, a conflict between two people in the young couple, they decide it's too much, it's too frustrating, and they quit it. They stop the relationship and they go their separate ways. So this is something really typical, and this is something that we have to work with. We have to work on this when we work with our students who pertain to the Generation Z. So this is something to keep in mind. Those are not the key words I suggested, but I think that the most important thing when we teach and work with people is to keep in mind whom are we working with, and we have to keep in mind that these will be the majority of our group. So behind this is, well, the contemporary research, theory of education. They all agree that the most recommended approach to teaching is inquiry-based approach. This is nothing new. This is something that's now this is the mainstream. This was the frontier. This wasn't mainstream 20 years ago, but now this is the mainstream. Inquiry-based approach, learning through doing, learning through discovery. So we all know that. When we say inquiry-based approach, what's your idea? What's your concept? What's your vision? What do you visualize? Is this a person? This is like, maybe because I'm coming from the university setting, my idea of inquiry-based approach is a person who is working on his or her laptop, reading books, articles, manuals, writing papers, checking bibliography, citing, citations, etc., etc. But no, it's not only that. Of course, it can be part of the inquiry-based approach. But the inquiry-based approach suggests that we have to simulate the scientific approach in whatever we do. When kids have 5 years, we can also simulate inquiry-based approach. Scientific approach, it's not simulation actually, it's inquiry, it's research, but modified according to the age of our pupils. And then we can do this with people of all ages, of course. So the idea is to start from the question and hypothesis. So everyone from each one of us have some question about that needs to be solved, problem that needs to be solved, and in relation to this problem or task that we need to do, we have questions and hypotheses. So what would be the best way to overcome these difficulties? What would be the problem of a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old? For example, my girl, I have twin daughters. One has the biggest problem now is that she got a bad grade in physics. And I'm like, okay, you have a bad grade in physics, but you have an excellent grade in history, so what's the problem? No, I want to have a good grade. So this is basic problem. I mean, her problem is how to overcome the difficulties in physics, so she can, or the content that she doesn't understand. So this is a problem of a 12-year-old schoolgirl in Serbia who wants to be an excellent pupil in every subject. I mean, she's an overachiever, but that's on the side. The thing is to find something that is relevant for the student and then to formulate it as a problem or as a task that needs to be solved. And then we have some initial hypothesis, just like a scientist. What would be the initial hypothesis? If I study more, like for my girl, if I study more, if I exercise more, if I try to work on different tasks, problems, then maybe I would be better in that. Then the next step is to do an inquiry. So what are the tasks that I need to work on? You can't just work from your manual, from your notebook, because that's enough, evidently. So she needs to look in other sources to ask for help from her mother or her father or a friend in school, etc., etc. And she's trying to test her hypothesis, does this work? Am I improving my knowledge in physics? And then the next step is development of criteria. How am I going to see if I'm a good student or not? Am I getting better in this subject or not? I'm just, somehow I went to the meta level of thinking about learning, but that's, I think, quite appropriate for the students to make them think about their process of learning. We can also do this on every task that is done in the classroom, how to communicate, how to send a message, how to send a mail, etc., etc. So, getting back to our meta level, development of criteria, what are these activities telling me? Am I good enough? Or do I need to make different to take another strategy to reach my goal, to have a good grade, or to at least understand what's the problem in physics? And then based on this development of criteria, the next stage would be to develop a concept. And in this example, the development of concept would be to understand what does it mean to learn physics, natural sciences, because I think it's quite abstract for some of you probably, because we have 13 subjects in primary school. Do you know that? 13 to 15 subjects in primary school. It's absurd. We have languages, foreign languages, mathematics, physics, chemistry, history, geography, arts, music, what else? Physical education, informatics as a separate subject. It's so much compartmentalized. Everything is so divided, it doesn't make sense. So that's why I'm talking about physics. It's class in physics. It's not natural sciences, as would be the case in some other countries. It's physics. It's not related to mathematics in any direct way. But interestingly enough, they're doing similar stuff on class in mathematics and in physics, but they don't put it together. And that's something that's making me very frustrated, to use correct words. And then the idea is here to develop a concept. What does it mean to be a good student in natural sciences, for example? And at the final level, it's the final and the top meta level of reflection, reflecting on one's own learning process. Or in this case, on the learning process, but in other contexts about the tasks that we were engaged with. So this reflection level gives me possibility to actually understand what I'm working with, what I'm dealing with, how can I improve, what went well, what could be better, etc., etc. So this is the basic part. And if we are missing this reflection part, then something crucial is missing from the learning process. It's just going a little bit chaotically. So this is the crucial, I would say, the crucial spiral in inquiry-based approach. And it's a modification of the models that I could see, so I don't cite anyone here. The idea behind, of course, is not new. It's co-construction of knowledge. It's participation, engaged participation in the learning process. If I'm doing something that's relevant for me, then the outcome would be something meaningful and some new product, because the knowledge is not given or taken, the knowledge is created through the process of learning. So what is the sign of learning? How do you know that your students are learning? You don't have to respond, but I would like to pause just a second. And if you have an idea and want to comment, that's cool. How do you know that your students are learning? They are asking questions. Great, great. What kind of questions? Sorry? Frequently, yes, very frequently. But questions in relation to the topic on how to solve the task, something else, maybe. How do they feel? What is their facial expression? How do they move? They're motivated, you see in their face, but are they also a little bit nervous? Huh? No? They're comfortable? Well, it's really opposite to what I would say. Maybe frustration, I'm choosing a strong word here, and I'm not suggesting that we need to frustrate our students or pupils. Quite the opposite. The idea is to create a supportive environment. But what I want to emphasize with this strong word is that if there isn't a little bit of frustration, there isn't really learning, because what we know is that we have to come out from the zone of comfort. If we are doing something that we know very well, we feel completely comfortable, and then there isn't really good learning. There is good atmosphere, that's cool, but then is there really learning? And I was really feeling uncomfortable and frustrated when seeing my students frustrated with some task, because I want them to feel really comfortable. I want them to enjoy the class, and I think about activities in the way that they will be enjoyable, interesting, playful, etc., etc. But if it's only on the level of playfulness and enjoyment, I'm wondering how much learning is happening, because in order to come out from the zone of comfort, there is some kind of stress. I'm now out of my zone of comfort. I'm speaking in the language that it's not my native language, and I'm also talking about to a group of people who can judge me quite a lot. And it's really coming out from the zone of comfort, and I'm hoping for some feedback after. So you can tell me this is good and what can you work on, because that's what's going to make me a better trainer in the future. And I'm accepting these stressful situations because I think that's the place to learn. And for the people who are like me, I'm quite introvert. You wouldn't believe, but I'm introvert. It's quite stressful. Just let me see, I'm not sure about the time. Okay. So getting out from the zone of comfort and then crossing the boundaries. And this is also something very intuitive, and a lot of us have the clear idea that when we want to learn, that we have to cross the boundaries. Actually, this can happen in a very overt, clear way, like going to a different country, changing the city, changing the apartment, changing the school. This is where learning really strongly happens. But also it happens when we are stretching our competencies, stretching our skills, doing something different. For example, if I'm always using PowerPoint presentation for my talks, classes, well, one day I'm not going to use a PowerPoint because it will make me think about alternative way to do something. And of course, boundaries in the way of getting in touch with other people. We are crossing the boundaries of our personal space. And this is where learning is happening. Nora Bateson, I don't know if you're familiar with this name, she's introducing the concept of symathesis. It's quite new, it's really, for me, it's very emotional, exciting. She's talking about, the idea is not new, but the concept, the word she's using is new. Symathesis, like learning together, and where is learning happening? On the borders. Well, what is the sign of not learning? Maybe you're familiar with this. I saw it on Facebook, and then I remembered that it works for this as an illustration of what I want to talk about. Have you seen these little bugs, ants, who can't cross the line because they see the frontier, the boundary? Huh? It's amazing, and it works. It's not only because I'm like skeptical, and I was thinking about maybe because it's the pen. Maybe with graphic pen wouldn't be the same, but there are also videos with graphic pen. So it's not the chemical that's making him be afraid of crossing the limit. So the limits are there, and by the I think it's quite normal that we tend to rely on the new, on the comfortable, and that's the thing that we prefer, of course, but then is it really a learning process? So talking about boundaries, the challenge is to cross the boundary and to be capable of taking risk, to make an adventure. And I think that eTwinning is like a perfect opportunity for this, like promotional talk. But I do believe, because it's making us come out from the zone of comfort, because we don't know who are we going to work with, we don't know what are the needs of this group of people, of this person that we are going to collaborate, what do they need, can I communicate with them on the language that is not my native language? There are so many questions and dilemmas that we have and that we face when we have to work with eTwinning, and we have to be aware of that, because it's like good for us that we are doing this, because it's not easy. And then another keyword that I put up on the first slide is like keywords, networks, like crucial keyword that has to do with everything. networks, and everything is now networked, networks, whatever you look, there are networks in between people, networking in the job setting, networking in school, networked cities, networked planet, whatever, everything is networked. And it's not a question, because this is a photo of our brain, which is also networked. These are neurons, of course. And it's like the best example of network. And being so anthropomorphocentric, is that the word? Well, focused on ourselves, we are egocentric to the point. Of course, we are going to use this metaphor for all different kinds of our reality. And I'm not saying that networks are not crucial. I'm saying actually that they are really important, and that that's the way we actually communicate. But we also can have this little question behind our head, asking, is it the only way of communicating? Because maybe we're thinking about that because that's the way our brain works. At least we think it's now. For the moment, it's like that. We'll see. Well, I am connection. I believe, and that's the right word, that this is the way our brain works, but who knows within 50 years what's going to be a new theory. So networked e-learning is basically a crucial concept that we're dealing with, and this is one of the definitions that I think just explains fine what we're dealing with. Learning situations and contexts which, through the use of ICT, allow learners to be connected with other people. So we have, again, several keywords: learning, ICT, and connection between people. So what are the key aspects of networked e-learning? Collaboration, co-construction of knowledge. I don't need to elaborate on that. I think everyone is familiar with the concept. But what is really important is that collaboration, co-construction knowledge creates learning community. If there isn't learning community, then it's a question whether this is actually happening. Then what is really good with networked e-learning, it's allowing different opportunities for inclusion and democracy in learning community, because it implies dialogic approach, so that it's not autocratic, because it's not one person who is in charge. It's actually project is decided, the topic of the project, the direction of the project is decided among the people who are participating in the project. Then the ICT technologies are of course used to reach the goals that we are setting, but I wouldn't insist on this as the objective. This is the tool. And again, my frustration with our educational system, why do we have informatics as a separate subject? It's a tool. They're going to kill me. Because this is the huge thing now happening in our schools. Well, I'm very critical of that. And then learners contributing to the development of learning resources and information. This is really important, because this is the underlying idea of project-based learning and network learning, because the idea behind this is that we are not served with the data or with the material because we are creating the material, and actually we are contributing to the community. And finally, equality, which is the word in the title of this talk, actually refers not so much on digital environment or electronic environment, it's referring to equality through connectivity. So this democratic dialogic approach to learning. Okay, so I think that we could go to, well, the paradigm for this is already known, the project-based learning. I learned now today that each one of you already participated in some kind of eTwinning project, so you have a lot of experience, and it's always project-based, right? It can't be anything else, it has to be project-based. And then if you use it, then you're very familiar with this idea that you have to identify a problem, then imagine the solution, then explore how to solve this problem or the task, then you learn through the process, you're thinking along the way, and then finally you develop new competencies and new skills that are being evaluated, and then you re-enter a new cycle of project and learning. The important thing with the project is that they insist on realistic tasks, something that is useful, something that is realistic, something that can be done, something that our pupils and students actually need. And in that way, it is relevant task. So we're not going to give them some abstract task that doesn't have anything to do with their life. It has to be something relevant for them. And then the idea is that it is also a transdisciplinary approach, because every problem there is, it's not solved within the limits of one discipline. At least I'm not aware of that problem. Coming from the field of linguistics, I can think of people dedicated to linguistics alone, but even if they're analyzing syntax, this has application in orthography or lexicography or different disciplines. So I really can't think of a problem. Maybe if you can, it would be really good to share that and to discuss if there is a problem that can be limited to just one discipline. And then inquiry-based approach that we talked about already, so there involved hands-on activities within which they collaborate with other people, and what is really important is that they have specific results, some kind of product, specific outcomes, and for those outcomes they have individualized feedback. They individualized or group feedback, but they have feedback. They have information about what they did and how they did it, and was it good, or how can it be improved. So I don't want to bore you with more theory, because a lot of these you already know. I would prefer to explore several examples that maybe illustrate what I was talking about. And the first one, and all the examples I'm offering 4. Each is with other target group. So the first one is with the students from primary school, from 5th to 8th grade. And it's really interesting that, step back. This is a task proposed by a teacher from a school in Kruševac, teacher of Italian language, and it was proposed as a task for European Day of Languages, and she shared that on the education for standards. So some of you maybe went through that education in Serbia. So this is how we have this example. I think it's really good, so I wanted to share it with you. So the target group is primary school students. They are participating and with hearing impairment, and they are making network with students from other countries. So it's not only from Serbia. I don't know which other countries were involved, but it's not the point. It was also, it's important to underline that it was through eTwinning. It was eTwinning project. And then they use different languages, sign languages, English, Italian, Serbian, and the description of the project. They needed to make a small presentation, a short text to present themselves, and they uploaded this information to eTwinning platform. And then the next step was to write a postcard to a friend in other country, collaborator. Then they needed to present community, their own local community, to the people, to the students from other school in the other country, and they elaborated the video dictionary with the most beautiful words in sign languages. So it's a different stage projects, and they evidently emphasize different competencies and skills. Communicative, evidently, because they're communicating different languages. Intercultural, it's also clear, because they're emphasizing social cultural aspects of their own local communities, but also of intercultural communication, because they're actually communicating with these guys, boys and girls in different countries. Also digital, because all went through the platform eTwinning, and different tools they were used to achieve the goals. And collaborative, because they weren't mainly through this part. The second and the second, third, and fourth aspect insisted on collaborative aspect of the project. The next example is from my own class. I'm teaching students of different grades, but at the second year of university studies, I'm teaching contemporary Spanish language. So the goal of this course is development of communicative competence and academic skills, of course. And one of the first projects I'm giving them is, this is not eTwinning project, I have to emphasize, but it could be done through eTwinning also. The idea behind this project is to get to know my students, because there are a lot of them, like 90 people in 3 groups, but I need to get to know 90 people in one academic year. And this is a good task to get to know them, because they need to elaborate, to make some kind of psychological profile of their own. So what's the task? The first step is to create one's own avatar, so their imagined identity. They think, is it fantastic being? Is it a person, human person, super hero, whatever. They have all the liberty to create this personality. With this, we also practice description of physical aspect, description of emotional or psychological aspects, activities, etc., etc. And then the next step is actually to get together in groups of 4 to 5 people and create a pantheon. So all the avatars form part of world, imagined world of pantheon, and they have to think of the role for each of the avatars. So within this pantheon, one will be, I don't know, the good guy, the bad guy. They have their liberty to think how they're going to work together, what they're going to elaborate, how they're going to develop their world. And they have all the liberty to choose the product, how they're going to represent their pantheons. So the first part of the task is similar to the first example. They have a written text where they expose their profile, and then in the next stage they create a pantheon and they make a visual presentation or a video or a blog or a text or a presentation, so they have the liberty to choose how they're going to present their imagined world. And the things I find out about the students is amazing, because when you have this kind of task, you always make it meaningful. You always, actually, your imagined personality, your imagined identity is always something that's very important for you. So I suggest this as one of the first activities when working with new group of people. And now it comes, of course, communicative, digital competence, because they're using different tools, and again, collaborative, because they have to work very closely in order to have some kind of good outcome. And then this is the third example also with my students, the second year. This is one of the typical projects. I actually found out some of the ideas on the internet, I think, or someone told me about it. Anyway, I'm doing this every year because they love it. I give them a specific budget to my students. They work in groups of 3 to 4, and they give them specific budget and a number of days. And I'm very generous. They have 3,000 euros, and they have to make a travel in 3 weeks, but to a country or countries where Spanish is spoken, because I'm teaching Spanish as a foreign language. So they have to choose a country or countries. They have to make specific travel arrangements, and for this they can't imagine information. They have to find flying agencies to find specific flights that actually exist. They have to contact touristic agencies. They have to find, to make an itinerary and to actually propose sleeping arrangements. What else do you need when you travel? Food, extra activities. Do they need a visa or not? What are some other requirements, insurance, etc. So they need to explain everything, and this is like the one part of the project, and another part is a flyer, like touristic flyer, pamphlet, is that the word? And then the presentation, and this is one. How do I play this? How can I play the? Teacher. Yeah, this is one of the videos my students prepared 2 years ago, I think. So this is Filipinas, and they're traveling to Filipinas for 3 weeks, and it's really cute what they came up. And as you can see, they are using different tools to accomplish this goal. They are communicating with people from Spanish-speaking countries and authentically, and finally they are researching different tours, and they need to collaborate very strongly and very closely with each other. And what I insist on is that each of them have a specific role within the project. So one is in charge of travel arrangements, another one of sleeping arrangements, etc., etc. This is the project that was done twice already between PhD students from our university, University of Belgrade, and students from the University of North Dakota in United States. It's part of this network, Transatlantic Pacific project. I don't know if you heard about it, because it's really cool and strong network between starting from the University of North Dakota, but they have network already well, all over the world. It's transatlantic and Pacific, in Asia, in Europe, in South America, etc., etc. Well, the goal of this specific project was to develop academic literacy, research, rhetorical and critical skills, and cooperation leadership through creation of a specific project proposal. And this was an actual project proposal. They needed to respond to a specific call for proposals. Well, it was a mock-up, of course. They didn't submit it because who could guarantee that they would do it, but it was actually done as if it was going to be submitted, and in all different steps of the process. So they needed to, we had 2 PhD students from here and 6 undergraduate students from the States, and they worked on the same text, and it was really cool because they got to know each other. They actually elaborated really excellent proposals, which is quite a difficult task to elaborate a project, you know. I'm guessing that you know how hard it is to make a good proposal, and they had to go through all the steps of this project. And it was a good experience also. So you can see that the underlying idea, and which I want to stress a little bit more at the end of this talk, the collaboration and teamwork, because underlying all of this project is good collaboration and teamwork. And I would stress the difference between the words group and team. With group, sometimes it happens with my students, so now I'm preempting the problem. Well, I tell them, you need to work in groups of 2 or 3, you need to present whatever, or prepare, investigate. Now they're doing an investigation of a cultural phenomena from the perspective of 3 countries. So what would typically happen is that one person is investigating the topic from the point of view of Serbia, another one from Spain, and another one from Mexico. They put it all together, and now they have a Frankenstein, which doesn't make much sense. It's not coherent. So the point with the teamwork is that they together elaborate the phenomenon or problem they want to investigate. This is the first part, the pre-group and the forming of the group. When we're forming the group, and this is how do you imagine the workshops. It's all in line with these dynamics. So the first part is thinking about the topics, and then elaborating and defining the roles and responsibilities within the group, elaborating some kind of guidelines and norms within the group, then doing the task. Then I'm missing here a little bit coming back together, brainstorming on the task, on the problem, or whatever is the thing that we are working on, and then getting back to the writing table, doing the task a little bit more, investigating a little bit more, and then getting back together and finishing the task at least twice, at least separating and brainstorming twice. I think this is really crucial. So what is the characteristic of team? Interaction, interdependence, and structure. And what is actually developing a strong coherence of a team? Those are the objectives. If the objective is imposed completely, it doesn't make sense. The group, the team won't appropriate it. It won't be part of the team. So the objectives, although we have as teacher, we have our objectives, the team of the students will develop their own objectives. That's the task of the group, of the team, to generate goals, to choose the goals, to negotiate on different goals, to execute the goals, and then to evaluate how good were they in fulfilling those goals. And finally, to work on team cohesion again, we can wonder, this is something that's really bothering my students. I don't know about your pupils, but I'm asking them, for example, do you think when working in teams, should you have the same grade or different grades? And the class is like, well, we have some kind of evaluation. It's either assessment, evaluation. Normally we have evaluation, feedback in form of comments and etc. But normally they have some kind of grading. And the idea is, my question for them is, are we supposed to give them the same grade or different grades? I don't know what you're doing. I'm insisting on this, that this is the shared destiny. If there isn't shared destiny, there isn't shared responsibility, because if you don't accept part of the responsibility for the final grade, you're not actually part of the team. Then we have the problem of those very dedicated students who work, like there is one always in one group who is doing the most of the job, and they really get frustrated and they don't like to work in teams. But then we can resolve this, but assigning specific tasks for each of the segment of the project that we have. So the idea is that we all participate in all aspects of the project, but there is only one person who is in charge of a specific part of the project. So I will be, for example, in charge of a final presentation, but we all participate in making this final presentation. But it's my saying, when we stop, I need to remind you for the material, to put it all together, etc. So you can you will know better how to organize these dynamics. Then similarity, good teams normally share something in common. It doesn't mean, well, this is it sounds a little counterintuitive to the idea of democracy, inclusive education, diversity, etc., etc., but it's not, because we don't need to resemble, to be the same in order to have something in common, so we can share needs, objectives. So again, objectives, what do we want with this? And there is always some kind of interest, some kind of shared interest, in the sense, not shared interest in the sense of the most basic idea, but in the sense, what do they like to do, what they like to talk about, etc., etc. And then proximity, how close are the members of the team? So how related are they among themselves? And if we have all these different aspects of the team, then we have a good team and a good accomplishment. And we have teams that will continue to collaborate even when we as teachers say, okay, now the project's done, good job, you can go on with your activities, but then they can keep in touch and send their photos through Insta, not SMSs, etc. So this would be what I have for you today. And if you have some questions, you're more than welcome to comments also, even better. So please, this would be it.